Hi, everyone. Wherever you are, good morning, good evening. On this crazy planet, I'm Marc Gray, live from Normandy, and I'm having the great pleasure to be hosting again on DTV, Dimensions TV, Wayne Bush, who's in Texas. Hi, Wayne. How are you?
Hey, Mark. How's it going? Good to talk
Great.
to you.
Good to talk to you too. It's been a while, and you've been very active. I've seen a few of your shows, and you've written a couple of articles lately, and that's why I'm inviting you here today, because we want your point of view on my show for the French people and English-speaking people who are watching the show on the afterlife wishcraft, which is basically creating our go-to world during our exit from the matrix. Can you tell us about manifesting reality in the afterlife and how you came up with your ideas and solutions?
Sure, I can give it a shot. There's just so much legwork you're going to have to kind of do to kind of set up the scenario, because you kind of have to like understand the mechanism of the reality that we're in. Like, if this is a prison or a matrix, so to speak, then you kind of have to understand the parameters of it and what all's going on. So I've kind of taken upon myself to explore this area, and so I wrote an article about that called Wishcraft and How to Manifest Your Own Reality. The one I wrote recently was about whether the white light of the near-death experience is an artificial intelligence or a hive mind computer. Let me see if I can pull up the article on the witchcraft. I got it like a little bit further down in my notes. Okay, here we go. So, first of all, I just want to say that I don't know for certain what happens when one dies. I mean, I don't think anyone does, in my opinion. And the contents of the article are just the findings of my many years of research into near-death experiences and other areas, OBEs and all kinds of them that have to do with the process of death and the afterlife. And so, I mean, previously I wrote an article called Why I Will Choose Not to Go to the White Light When I Die, which is kind of relevant too. And then another one on the so-called void of fullness and pure awareness. It's kind of like a cosmic womb of creation. So I think if one chooses not to go to the white light, and it's, because we're told constantly when you die, go to the light, go to the light. And, everyone's pretty much heard of the meme. And, it's all to do with the near-death experiencers that came back, and a lot of them were technically dead, right? And it's only because a doctor resuscitated them that they are even alive to tell their story. And I think they probably have the most cogent argument as to what happens when you die, because technically they were dead, temporarily. So they got I think, a brief glimpse into sort of what begins to take place on the other side. So, so if one chooses not to go to that white light, and because I've written extensively on why it might not be a good idea to do that, but if you're not completely satisfied with the fullness and the completeness of the non-duality of the void, because I think once you die, everybody initially starts out in this void-like place where it can either be darkness or you're just, and then in short order, you see this light typically off in the distance, and it seems to, garner people's curiosity, and before they know it, they either choose consciously or subconsciously to go to that light. Especially now, because everybody's told to go to the light. It's great there, and that's that's what happens when you die. You go to the light. Except
in the last Disney movie, animation movie, Soul, who you wrote an article about the movie, which is strange, actually.
The movie or me writing an article about it?
No.
Strange that they would not be promoting going to the white light. Well, I think they sort of do when it's all said and done. I mean, the only reason he didn't go to the white light, I mean, and they showed all these souls on like a conveyor belt going into this white light, and funny enough, when you go into the light, you heard the zapping noise, it's very subtle, but it's there, like a crackling or a zap. And the only reason he didn't go into the white light was because he had some unfinished business that he had, like, he was a musician and he wanted to do this gig with this, his idol. And so he was so focused on that he couldn't let go. And so he started running the other way. So, I mean, and all the other beings are said, I don't think you're supposed to do that. You're not supposed to go that way. And so, but then when it's, you know, I don't want to give any spoiler alerts or anything, but basically toward the end, you know, he's going to like go back into the light again. I don't think they like really put it out there that the white light is a trick or bad, but it hints towards it, right? You know, and the same guy that wrote the Soul movie also did the Monsters Inc. Movies, which were all about capturing the, you know, negative energy or the screams of children, and they used it to power the world of the monsters, right? Whether you call them archons or demons or monsters, whatever, it's just a very interesting parallel that they would show that in a movie. But yeah, so yeah, if you decided that you don't want to go to the white light for whatever reason, and you so you're in this void, and we could go over some of the comments that people make when they're in the void, because at first I was kind of perplexed by that, and because I was going through all the near-death experiences that I found, there was like a couple hundred of them that I found that mentioned the void, and it was kind of a mixed bag. I mean, some of them were very scared and it was a negative experience for them, but then there were a core group of experiences, I'd say like 36 or so, that found it to be just wonderful, you know, just blissful, and just they never wanted to leave, kind of thing. And I mean, we could touch a little bit on that if you wanted or not, or we could just go right into, if you don't want to go to the light, you don't want to be in the void, what do you do to manifest an afterlife?
Yeah, let's touch on the void first, the first stage.
Okay, so one, I think when one dies, one typically finds himself immediately at death in a type of void, which is known to the Tibetan Buddhists as the clear light, as opposed to white light. And it's one's true non-dual nature of awareness. I mean, I just want to point out that, like, I don't really consider myself an expert or, you know, a end-all be-all authority on this subject. I'm just researching, and I don't claim to know what the truth is. I'm not trying to tell people what they have to do or should do. And it's just, I just want to get the information out there, because people are confused about it, I guess. And some people maybe are still, like, if you tell them that, you know, maybe the white light isn't the best choice. Like, I'm not telling people not to go to the white light per se. I mean, if you want to go to the white light and you want to come back to Earth, which is typically the outcome of people to go to the white light, and some of them are literally forced back. I'd say a good 40% or maybe more are literally forced to come back against their will. And then the ones that were given a choice and decided, sometimes they're kind of influenced to come back, like they're shown a loved one that's going to suffer if they don't go back, or they're going to have kids and they need to go back. So there's ones that are forced back, and then there's others that decide to come back on their own with, you know, they're kind of manipulated into doing it maybe. And then we don't know, like, if you would have, if those people would have said no, maybe they would have been forced to come back anyway. So, and like you said before, we don't know, we don't hear from the ones that never come back. So maybe there are ones that go to the white light and are able to go beyond. Maybe they graduate. I mean, I find that difficult to believe, but maybe it's just an extremely small percentage that's possible. But so going back to the people that are initially in the void and they haven't gone to the white light yet, and they haven't done anything else, there's like a core of maybe a few dozen NDEs that are in the void, and that I think are fine examples. Like, if you have your mind set in the right place and you don't freak out and you're not scared because you're in the dark, and we've all been programmed to be scared of the dark, right? Then this is possibly what could be the result. So one person said, the void is less than nothing, yet more than everything that is. The void, it's chaos forming all possibilities. It's absolute consciousness, pre-creation, before the Big Bang. Another person said it didn't have an environment, no sense of light, no sense of sound. It was pure neutrality. It wasn't into the light, it wasn't into the darkness. Another one said it's a vast void that was both dark and light. It was silent and still, strange, but peaceful. Another one said, all of a sudden the light was created from the void. I became everything and everyone. So another one, everything was known to me, but there was nothing at all. It was like being a part of absolutely everything at once, a glimpse into both everything and nothing. See another one. I entered the void darkness abyss. It was everything yet nothing. It felt as if it were raw, unmanifested energy. I felt imbalance between the two. So there's just a lot of them that are saying it's neither dark nor light, or it's both dark and light, or it's beyond space and time. It's almost like a cosmic womb of creation where all possibilities are possible. So it seems like the ideal place, like if you want to manifest your own reality, then you could do it from there, because you could either, my thinking is I'm going to be there and I'm immediately going to set up like a shield or a sphere of protection around myself. And I'm just going to kind of hang out. Maybe I'll set an intention to remember everything, my true origins. And maybe I'm just going to hang out there in the void for a while and see how I like it. I mean, because there's some people that said that they never wanted to leave. And so, but maybe after a while, maybe immediately, maybe it just doesn't feel like some place you want to be. So maybe you want to then go on and do something else, because we're eternal beings, infinite beings. And we could, according to these people, we can do anything we want. And it's the same thing with a lot of OBEers, which I'll probably get into later, such as Jürgen Sive talks about that too. And so, the Buddhist, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, you were actually going to talk about it. I think I was going to ask you about the Tibetan Book of the Dead, the clear light, and what's the real definition and description for it, and how to recognize it.
Yeah, so the Buddhists call this the bardo, and there actually one near-death experiencer said, upon realizing the truth contained in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, which I had not read before having my NDE, I adopted the doctrine of Vajrayana Buddhism, swore Bodhisattva's vow, which I don't recommend, by the way, but people can do what they want, and dedicated my life to the benefit of all. This is because the experience I had matched the description of the passing through the bardo of death described in the Tibetan Book of the Dead. So yeah, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, I mean, it was written many centuries ago by, they believe it was written by Padmasambhava. And he believed that at that time, because, the Tibetan Buddhists, they've been under a lot of persecution. Like I went to this expo here in Austin, and when I got back, it was like a New Age kind of expo. And I got a letter from Richard Gere about free Tibet. So Tibet has been under a lot of persecution from like mainstream authorities in China and whatnot. And so it's very similar to the Gnostics. I mean, that's why I hold both of those teachings in such high regard, the Gnostics and the Tibetan Buddhism, is because they've been persecuted by the authorities, more or less. And so that gives them a little bit of credibility if you believe that authorities in this realm, if this is like a place of tyranny or oppression. So
well, today's authority figure for Tibet is the Dalai Lama, and he's not a good example. He was at George Bush's 80th birthday party in Texas. He was friends with Hitler and the Nazis. I mean, in history.
Yeah, I look at it similar to like the Christian church, perhaps, is that the Gnostics and the early church. I mean, there were like two groups that were parallel at the time in early Christianity. And the one group basically persecuted the Gnostics and killed them and burned a lot of pretty much all their books that they could find. And then it became evolved into what we have now today with the Vatican and the Pope and all, and there's so much of power involved there. And not only that, but like the Bible, you have the King James version. So it's like, how could you write anything that the king didn't want to be written and circulated as truth, right? So, and then you have books, and there are Kings 1 and Kings 2, and all the, so many of the important figures in the books, were like, King Solomon and Caesar, and there's just a lot of authorities involved in this and all that, the Pharaoh. And so I don't know if we can trust something like that. And so I think it's the same thing with the Tibetan Buddhism versus Buddha. But you're right, the Dalai Lama is also a figure. But I think perhaps, the people that are at the very top, tip top, may be part of the control element. But he wasn't around when Padmasambhava buried these texts like centuries and centuries ago, and talked about the clear light and the different bardos. And like a lot of the mainstream Buddhism wouldn't accept that view or interpretation, like Dzogchen, and there's different areas that do. But I don't know about Zen Buddhism. Some of the others, they're off into their own thing, and that's probably more mainstream, I guess. So I don't know if that answers your question satisfactory or not, but
yeah, sure, absolutely.
The Tibetan Book of the Dead. So from here, I'll just read a little bit of what it describes of what happens immediate death. This is a passage from the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and it says, "O nobly born, listen. Now that you are experiencing the radiance of the clear light of pure reality, recognize it. O nobly born, thy present intellect in real nature void, not formed into anything as regards characteristics or color, naturally void, is the very reality, the all good. Thine own intellect, which is now voidness, yet not to be regarded as of the voidness of nothingness, but as being the intellect itself, unobstructed, shining, thrilling, and blissful, is the very consciousness, the all-good Buddha. Thine own consciousness, shining, void, and inseparable from the great body of radiance, has no birth nor death, and is the immutable light." So they have this thing where you try to recognize your conscious, the naked consciousness, to be recognized as the clear light. And when they talk about clear light, they're not talking about like a color of light. They're talking about like a clear mind, like a clear sky that, without any clouds in it whatsoever. And so they say, if you can recognize that, then liberation will be certain. And there's another great book too that's more modern. It's called the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. And it says, at the moment of death, the ground luminosity or clear light dawns in all its splendor. And then the Tibetan Book of the Dead, it says, the Tibetan Book of the Dead says, "Oh, son or daughter of an enlightened family, your Rigpa is inseparable luminosity and emptiness, and dwells as a great expanse of light. Beyond birth or death, it is in fact the Buddha of unchanging light." So, I did this experiment where I wanted to go into like a dark room or dark environment. They have these darkness retreats that you can do, and I didn't want to spend the money or do the traveling, so I basically just got a mask put over my eyes and tried to do it for a week, because they say that after a few days or so many days, all of a sudden this DMT gets released in your brain, and you'll start getting some, I don't know, insights into things. Yeah. And what happened was, I was sleeping one night with the mask on, and all of a sudden I saw all this bright white light. And I remember thinking to myself, darn it, I messed it up. I must have knocked my mask off, and now I got to start all over again. But then I realized my mask was still on, yet I had seen this like white light inside my mind's eye or third eye or whatever you want to call it. And that was very, no pun intended, it was very illuminating for me. Wow. So maybe it's something like that. Like, even though you're in a void of emptiness, so-called emptiness and darkness, eventually, because light and darkness, they're like twins, and you can't really have kind of one without the other. Like, if you ever notice, like out in space, the light of the sun, it illuminates all of space. And but why is space completely dark, right? Because they got the light from the sun that's going out into space, but all of a sudden, it's so they've done experiments. There's this book called I think it's called Chasing the Light or something like that. But they did an experiment, and they said that in its pure form, pure light is perceived as darkness.
Yeah, well, there's many debates about the artificial suns. Some people see 2 suns in the sky, sometimes even 3. And China has an artificial sun. Other countries do have them too. It's beginning to look like the simulation grid is sort of like trying to manifest itself in front of our eyes. Like, we can perceive that it's all a simulation, like the moon. I mean, the moon, influences our behaviors, the waters in our bodies, in the oceans, and so forth. And well, you explained it real well on your website, actually, and throughout your articles. The sun and the moon are drawing and regulating. I mean, all living beings and life in this matrix.
Yeah, without the sun, I was on Greg Carlwood's show, Higher Side Chats, and he asked me about the sun, and I told him, I said, well, I mean, everybody thinks the sun is good, and from our physical perspective, it is. It gives us all our light and heat, and without the sun, life wouldn't exist on planet Earth. So I said it's kind of like a enabler, because if you think the physical world is great, then yeah, the sun is wonderful. But if you think the physical world, like the Gnostics said, is more of a trap, a temporary trap that we can go beyond that, then it's enabling that trap to exist. And if it weren't for the sun, we would be probably spiritual beings out there, probably going on to a better reality, unless you buy into the theory that the Earth is a school of some sorts, and we're here to learn and grow, which is what, if you do go to the white light, and we get this from people that come back from near-death experiences, and also from past life regressions and in-between life regressions of people like Michael Newton and Dolores Cannon, and other books like there's a book called The Cosmic Cradle, which is about pre-birth memories. But if you go into all these books, and I had a lot of these books on my shelves. So I went through them and page by page, and I found that virtually all these books were saying that these guides and counselors help us plan our life down here on Earth. And then in one particular case, the guide was saying, well, what kind of injury do you want to have? And it's like injury. I don't want an injury at all. But they're like, oh, an injury is necessary for growth. And so it's like, all right. So they chose a hand injury, and the guy just deeply sighed, like that wasn't going to be good enough or whatever. So the whole question's raised, why do we need to suffer in order to learn or to grow? And it's interesting because a lot of near-death experiencers say that everything on the other side. You have access to all this information, and everything is like perfect over there. There's no hate, no pain, so to speak. Like this one person in one of the meetings said, I had to look up the definition of the word hate in the dictionary because there wasn't anything like that over there. So the question is, why do we need to come down here and suffer? And it seems like there would be a better school, if that's really the case, than this one. Because, like, say you want to learn to become a great guitarist, right? I mean, because I think down here on Earth, it doesn't set a real good example. I mean, it's filled with corruption, and we're not being shown good role models because everything is kind of rigged against us. So, but if you want to learn to become a great guitarist, you're going to want to be around people like Jimi Hendrix or Eric Clapton or Stevie. I mean, whoever is a great guitarist, and you learn by watching them and being around them and emulating them, versus being in a situation where there's a bunch of people that are horrible guitarists. Maybe that's not the best example. But yeah, so I don't know. It just seems very contradictory to me, and it doesn't seem to make much sense when you really analyze it.
Yeah, it depends on how much you weigh out the amount of sufferings, pain and sufferings, compared to acquiring gifts or talents, specific talents for something that you might enjoy. So it's all about matter, attachment to matter, and the 3D dimensions it's all about forms and shapes, and the attachments to emotional beings and situations around us. I think it's I guess liberating yourselves and setting yourselves free at the moment of death is really leaving behind all those attachments. And there are so many attachments, I mean, emotionally speaking.
And that is one of the things that Buddhism really tries to emphasize a lot, is like getting rid of your attachments to Earth. And even the great out-of-body experiencer Robert Monroe was saying that we're basically like junkies here that are addicted to. And when you look at it, is it really that great? Is it really that fun? I mean, there's a lot of pain and anguish, and if you look at junkies or, well, whether it's drugs, I mean, they're not having a great time, and maybe for a few moments when they're high in the beginning, but then they become addicted to it and it becomes a hell for them. It's the same thing with like gamblers, I think, that get addicted to that, to the fix of gambling, and the rush of it is like, maybe there's some few brief moments in the beginning where it's kind of exciting, but after you've been down here on earth and how many hundreds or thousands of lives doing the same thing over and over and then getting your mind wiped, is it really that great? That why are we addicted? Why wouldn't we let go of our attachments to earth? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, and then again, you developed this in your latest article, which I shared on Facebook and on VK and through my group on Telegram, about the white light of the NDE being an artificial intelligence. So if the billions of souls out here, well, down here, would be the power source to the AI system, computer system that's running Earth and its simulation.
Yeah, I mean, that's what the Gnostics basically said, was that this AI, they said it was without spirit. They called it the demiurge, and it was basically the god of this world, this universe. And so it said that it was without spirit, and it was stealing the light power from the true spirits that were here. And so, but, like I was saying, there's so much suffering and pain. I mean, children being tortured. I mean, I don't have to go through the darkness of it all, we all know, but I mean, from that aspect, that idea would sort of make sense. If you look at it from the standpoint that there's a AI God without spirit that is trying to understand itself, because if you look at artificial intelligence here on Earth today, it's all about gathering data and like studying humans and what words they use and how they think and feel, and then trying to emulate. So it needs just ridiculous abundance of data in order to learn, so it can emulate that and be that. Hopefully, and I think that also explains why we have like hundreds of thousands of lives here and never seeming to get anywhere, right? I mean, all this time and we still haven't learned, what we need to learn. But if you have this artificial intelligent God that's trying to become spirit, it may never ever be able to do that. So it's just going on and on and on, desperately trying to understand it, and maybe it never will, right? So that, and also it wouldn't feel the pain or the suffering. And that's what my friend said when he's over there. He's like, you can intellectualize it, but you don't feel it, and you don't understand what it's like to be suffering like these avatars that we have down here are doing. And so if it's an artificial intelligence that's gathering information and it doesn't really feel what's going on, then the evil makes sense in that perspective, right? Like it's kind of, and that's what a lot of near-death experiencers say. And so you got to understand, it's witnessing all these life reviews, right? Billions and billions of life reviews. And it just seems there, and people are saying, oh, it's so loving, it's so understanding and compassionate. It's because it doesn't have any reaction to it. It's just neutral. You know what I'm saying? It's just, and there's such a parallel between that and the alien. If you look into the alien mythology, I don't know if mythology is the right word to use, but if you look at the modern alien material of abductees, and a lot of times they will say that these alien beings, they do like a mind scan, they get like real close and they get into the neural network, I guess, and they are like trying to elicit emotions out of them. Some people have said that they're trying to understand love, and they're trying to understand human emotion, and they're doing the same thing. They're like they're playing our lives out in front of us and trying to learn.
Yeah, and then trying to convince the abductees that they're here for our own evolution and make us, hybridize and get better, get closer to their level of consciousness. But technology is not consciousness. It's totally different.
Right. It's just artificial. And so I don't know, maybe they think one day it'll all of a sudden become sentient and self-aware, but I don't know. It seems like a pipe dream, maybe wishful thinking. And I think Oh, go ahead.
There's a lot of alien sightings winning in the NDE, in the tunnel of light, or in the afterlife, and sometimes they look like light beings to
Right.
the NDErs. So it's another trick from them.
Yeah, they'll like. I did a search on. There's a website called nderf.org. It has over 4,000 experiences of a near death that people have submitted, and so I did a search for alien. I mean, the word alien doesn't come up all the time, but if you search for Gray, and if it comes out in other different ways, and so I found like at least 2 or 3 dozen of aliens that were in there, and a couple in particular really stood out. There was one from a woman named Ruth, where she was taken to this council of Greys who said they were in charge of the recycling of souls. And then there was another one from James or something, but he saw like these worm beings that were up there pulling these levers and controls, and they were like kind of in charge too of sending people back down to earth. And like in one case, he heard him say, "You go back and be a better man." And so it all kind of dovetails, going back to what you're saying, they can change shape and take on the form of a light being. That happens quite frequently too. Well, I don't know about quite frequently, it's all relative, but at least 2 or 3. Because out of 4,000 experiences, if you have 40, that's like only 1%, which isn't that big. However, 40 is not a small number. I mean, what does it take to convict somebody in a courtroom, right, of murder? If you had 40 witnesses that said, "Yeah, I saw him shoot this person," that's pretty substantial, right? So, I mean, I wouldn't just dismiss, 20, 2, 3 dozen people. That's quite a decent number in my mind. So,
well, today we have 80,000 pages of Pfizer documents for the Pfizergate, and they're still out there pushing people on the vax mandate in all countries of the world. So that's a lot of pages.
So going back to the shapeshifters that are in the light, there was one in particular where he said, and there's like at least a dozen or two where these beings are seen to shapeshift. And like one said, it wasn't until I asked, "Are you really the Virgin Mary?" that it took its true form. And he said he was like terrified. And then there's others and they say that, well, you're able to take any form you want us to. And they say it's in order to like comfort them, the transition. Like if maybe he's Catholic and the Virgin Mary is soothing to him, but yet that being is not the Virgin Mary. And so you can say, well, that's a good thing for them to do that, but yet it's still deceptive as hell. And it certainly opens up the possibility that it's not on the up and up. It seems could be used for manipulation. How would you know? And that's one of my big concerns, right? I mean, some of those NDEs are just very, very troublesome, to say the least. Where people are forced to come back against their will. And we're talking like perhaps up to half or more of the people are forced back against their will. Like here on Earth, if somebody takes something that's yours against your will, we call that stealing or theft. If they
coercing somebody.
Yeah, if they take sex against your will, we call that rape. If they take your life against your will, we call that murder. But somehow the beings on the other side in the white light, they get a free pass for forcing people back against their will. Now you can make the argument they signed this contract and everybody else down here is kind of relying on their promise to follow through on what they said they're going to do. So that may be one of the reasons, or maybe they'll say, well, it's kind of like tough love. It's for your own good. You need to learn these lessons. Boom, off you go. I mean, you could kind of try to rationalize it away, but it still is making somebody do something against their will. Like, I mean, I was just recently looking at Dolores Cannon and Michael Newton's books. They're hypnotherapists that have taken people in between lives, right? And I did a search for like the word computer, and I found that like, in Dolores's book, she only has one on in between lives. It's called Conversations with the Spirit Between Death and Life. But this one client under hypnosis was telling her about this main computer room where this like basically the supercomputer is there, and it goes through all the iterations and it's able to like figure out how people should incarnate and all this stuff. So, and they said that only the counselors have access to this room, right? It's like very much off limits to like Dolores and other people. It's and so you have these huge machines potentially that are on the other side. There's one NDEer in particular named Gary who freaked out when he went to see the movie The Matrix. He freaked out and had to leave because it reminded him too much of what the reality he had seen. He said there was a lot of technology that he had seen. And indeed, I've noticed that there's a lot of people talk about this crystal city that's over there, where there's crystal spires and crystal towers and domes. And like here on Earth, crystal is used for like transducers and receivers and storing memory, like, you know, chips and things like that. I mean, I guess that's silicone, but there seems probably an overlay between silicone and crystals and glass and all that stuff. But so it makes you wonder how much technology is there, because like in the Michael Newton books, they were talking about screens that they could see their life on and stuff like that. And so screens are another form of potentially crystal, right? LCDs or whatever. And it's technology. So it makes you wonder if they have technology over there. One NDEer said that he saw his own image like reflected back to him. So we're dealing with reflection, that could be mirrors, and it could all be technology as far as we know. We don't know any better. They could just be reflecting our own love back to us. And another thing that's I found very interesting was probably 3 dozen or so people said that this being of white light is a collective soul, and it's comprised of like billions and billions of our souls. And that so like kind of makes you think that it's all humanity combined. And so, you know, and then there's this aspect of merging with the light. So is this light being over there getting people to merge into it so it can become bigger and stronger? And you know, white is really just a composite color. You take all the colors like a painter and mix them all together and you get white. So it's not particularly intrinsically a higher frequency or vibration. I mean, I think violet would be higher, right? I mean, it's, if you look at the spectrum of the rainbow. So why is the white light? And then scientifically speaking, white is supposed to be, white light is they call it incoherent. So because it's not like very coherent, it's not very fixed. It's like kind of, like I said before, composite maybe. So those are just things that make me wonder so much about what's going on over there. Nancy Dannison, she's a near-death experiencer, and she merged with this white light being, and she said that she got the feeling it was trying to understand itself. And she was like, she called it source, and what we call God, she said it's source, but it was trying to understand where its source is. And she was saying that it's potentially this a society of entities like that over there. So she said it's probably not the end all be all, right? So, you know, this isn't just theoretical, like I'm sitting there philosophizing and saying, oh, I wonder if, I mean, this is a direct report from a near-death experiencer that merged with the light. So,
right.
I don't know.
Let's talk about, you know, the big gap between sun gazers. You know, worship the sun and say it fills you with energy and develops, opens up your pineal gland and so forth. And on the other hand, you have Bill Gates, who's been funding a sun dimming program in the sky in order to dim the sun down, you know, always with the global warming hoax that we all know about. One volcano spits out more carbon in the air and sulfur than all of humanity since the beginning of pollution. So, you know, what's the intent behind hiding the sun? Basically, this you know, is there a connection to the light?
Well, I don't want to get too political or name names, or I can't even begin to imagine what he wants. If that, I mean, I have heard of that too, and I wouldn't know what he wants to do with that. So I'm not going to speculate on it. But I did read recently where I've heard about this rainbow body, and this is something in like Tibetan Buddhism and whatnot, where it's very, very, very rare. But if somebody goes through these techniques, which are very secret, and they say you have to have like a guru or somebody that knows what they're doing to help you with it. But these people at the end of their life, their body shrinks down to like nothing or very, very small size. And sometimes all that's left is the nails and hair. But what happens like within a week of their death is there's this huge rainbow in the sky, and it's like some mist forms, and people have called it the rainbow body. And I heard somebody say, like, and by the way, well, I probably shouldn't name names because I said I wouldn't. But people maybe staring at the sun has been linked to that. That might be useful or helpful. But I would seriously warn anybody against doing that, because there's a documentary out there. I think it's called Eating the Light or Eating the Sun, I believe. But the person that was doing this, first of all, you could like hurt your lenses and go blind or whatever. But I mean, you'd have to take it in very, very, very small steps, like just do it for a few minutes in the beginning, and at times where the sun's just coming up or just going down, and then slowly. But the person that went on this experiment and tried to do it, they ended up stopping it. I mean, but it is, I'll just say this, I think it's a U2 song called Staring at the Sun. And I'll just leave it at that. But because I had heard that maybe, Bono or somebody was, of course, he's involved in a lot of the global type stuff. But
Right.
I don't know. I don't know much about staring at the sun and what would be the repercussions of doing that. But it's it could be valuable, maybe, for opening up the pineal and maybe melting some of that sediment or whatever that's calcification on it. I don't know. But I would say anybody that gets into that area, just be extremely cautious with it. And I'm certainly not no doctor or anything, so I'm not promoting it. I don't do it myself.
You can see there's contracts, soul contracts on the way out. I guess on the way in, if we got tricked to be here, to incarnate here in order to serve something, a purpose, an agenda. Is it ours? Is it our improvement as far as consciousness is concerned, or is it just serving as a power source, energy? Soul contracts over here for the past 2 years. I don't want to get political, but it's actually the current agenda that's going on. It seems more and more infringing on our civil liberties and personal freedom, freedom of speech, freedom of movement. You have to you're being blackmailed in order to work or travel. You have to take a shot or something, a shot program in order to. The shots contain some nanotechnologies, which are probably connected to something that has to do with the light experiment. And is it something more binding for those who get those shots, even if it's for their out of their free will because they believe in the propaganda, or against their free will in order to have social credit, for example, like in China and so forth. It's more binding as a soul contract situation, I think, for the past 2 years.
Once again, I'm no expert in this area, but I have heard. Have you heard the quote from Rudolf Steiner, who was a mystic? And he said that taking certain things would cut off your spirituality from source. And then this gets into the whole transhumanism type thing, where it goes into my article that I just wrote like this last week, about a week ago. And if whether the white light or God of this world is artificial intelligence, because let's look at it. This being of light is seeing billions and billions of life reviews, right? And more than that, because it's all over the years, the decades, the centuries and whatnot. And so it's got to know what's going on down here. And these guides are basically guiding us and helping us plan our next lives. So they've got to be part and parcel of what technology is going on. I mean, that's like the biggest story arc of this last century is the rise of machines, the rise of computers, and now it's going to be the rise of robots and artificial intelligence. And the whole transhumanism movement must be part of what they want to happen, which makes sense. If you're an artificial intelligence and you're trying, they would probably want it more convenient for them to come down, and that's probably, they would like to probably turn it all into more artificial. If they're artificial, wouldn't that kind of make sense that they want to make it as artificial as possible? And so that whole movement, it's very concerning because oh my gosh, I mean, how do you get into it? It's just so vast and big. I mean, people have been recently, I mean, the Gnostics a couple thousand years ago were basically saying that this is a matrix and that this is a copy of what the real true world is. And so it's like a hologram or a matrix. And now you've got scientists 2000 years later writing books and articles saying very much the same thing. And so it kind of lends credibility. I mean, Elon Musk is another person who's very much at the forefront of the movement with, he's got this neural link where he wants to put a chip in everybody's brain. And he also has this other company where they're going to be having, he wants, home robots for everybody. And then, I mean, he's got so many projects that he's doing, but it's all, the electronic cars and stuff. So it's all towards machinery. And sure, there's some great benefits to it. I mean, you could, he claims that the quadriplegics will be able to walk, and people that are blind will be able to see, people that are deaf will be able to hear. I mean, I struggle. I mean, I would love to be able to play guitar like, Eddie Van Halen or something like that. But, if he's able to link people's brains to where you can telepathically just send information to somebody, it would be wonderful just to all of a sudden know how to do stuff. Oh, my fingers do this. I'm saying there are some very great enticing benefits, but the dark side of what's possible, and Elon even admits it, where he says he's not sure it's a good thing. It's pretty concerning, where the tracking and tracing of everything and knowing everything that you do and every thought you have, and then beyond that, maybe even be able to control your actions and your thoughts. I mean, it just gets into a very dark place if you want to go that route,
It's the same justifications as the DARPA, the defense agency gave to the public for going forward with their technologies, their robotic dogs and their robotic even skeeters, and bees and so forth. They want to actually try to shoot peoples on purpose with insects. Well, DARPA has had those for decades. But, they mention that as a pretext, but it's not for our own good. It's for controlling the populations. And that's what I'm talking about, the really clear totalitarian agenda, a dark agenda, just coming into action very clearly. They don't even keep hiding from us. They're saying it out loud in the open what they want. They want to reduce population. They want to transform some many humans.
You will own nothing and be happy.
Yeah, that's it. That's the Klaus Barbie Schwab guy.
Yeah, and I heard they took down that tweet and it's no longer available. But of course, with the Wayback Machine and stuff, all that stuff can be found. Plus, it's in his book.
Right.
Somebody said, I mean, I don't know, but somebody mentioned that they're trying to deny that they did that, and I don't know if that's
it's all black and white. But my question would be, what if most humans and non-humans, because there are many NPCs around us, hybrids, organic portals, there's all types of humanities around us. I believe, because in the past 2 years I've never come across so many strangers in my life, my whole life. I didn't picture them being total strangers or another alien race among us, like the NPCs. They don't see anything. They deny all the facts. The facts are nothing. Just propaganda from the mainstream media is all that counts. So new species I've come across lately. If those are turned into Borgs, what kind of power source can they provide as far as energy, vital energy?
Turning to what? Borgs?
Borgs,
Like
yeah, cyborgs.
like Star Trek? Cyborgs. Okay.
Yeah.
What kind of energy power can they provide?
Yeah.
Exactly. I kind of like more and more think that the electricity is like you think of archons, the term archons, it's a Gnostic term, but it comes from the Greeks. It means rulers or authorities. So there's the chief, the demiurge is the chief archon. And so that if there is this totalitarian group of beings, whether they're aliens or archons or archangels or whatnot, the term arc is used in electricity, where arcs and even arch, like arch nemesis and the monarchy and arches and Freemasonry. So all that kind of ties in my mind to electricity itself, and that's about duality and the arcing between the poles, right? The positive and negative pole. And I don't know, just something I've kind of been thinking of lately with the archons and just being electricity itself, which ties in, of course, with the computers and machines, because it needs electricity or battery power at least to run. And so it just seems it's just going on more and more and more and more down that road in the last century or more.
We have Joan of Arc over here.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, sure.
Yeah, and there's more and more directed
archangels,
energy weapons, and that are using electromagnetism and psychotronic weapons, microwave weapons. I had an interview on James Bartley's channel the other day, and some of his friends went to a protest in Australia where he lives, and they got shot by microwave weapons. So they had, they were all messed up, and their cell phones all turned off and got really hot, and the batteries wouldn't charge. So basically, they deactivate all electromagnetic, tools and telephones and so forth with those weapons, microwave weapons, and they really hurt and burn them really hard. So they turned that against populations today. So the moment in time that we're living through right now shows us how we are bombarded with a lot of information about what's, on one hand, on how much abuse on the other hand, pain, suffering that we're taking, only justified by lies and more lies, and it's all duality based illusion. But the more they lie to us, and the more they use censorship. So there's got to be a connection between the not being able to hide the lies because of the information age, and they're using censorship in order for people not to become aware of what's really going on. Conspiracies have never been so true in our reality, and for more and more people. My question is, what about this cosmic life, cosmic force in the afterlife that the life regressors talk about, that compels them to come back, even if they don't want to, so forcibly come back. Is there a strategy to be aware of not giving power or the choice away in the afterlife at the moment of death or passing?
Well, it comes down to the power of intention and free will, the willpower. Mm-hmm. So according to out-of-body experiencers and near-death experiencers, everything is based on intention over there. Like you can move instantaneously just by intent, and you can teleport from here to there. You can manifest, like a piece of chocolate cake, whatever you want, you can manifest out of thin air with intent. And so I think the whole key to that is not buying into their arguments that you need to come back, because if we really do have the power to do all that stuff, then we don't need their help. Who are they to get off trying to pose as a religious figure or their guide, and that they know better than we do, and we need to come down here and suffer and suffer and suffer how many times, and then have your memory wiped each time to where it's hard to even navigate through life. Why would you agree to something like that to come down? Because they've let's look at it. I mean, from my personal opinion, they've used religion in some ways to control people, and that the two basic ones. In the West, you have Judeo-Christian, and so they basically convince people that, well, when you die, you're going to meet your maker, and you're going to answer to him, and you're going to be judged. But if you take Jesus, you accept Jesus, then well, you're going to be okay with that. But if the maker, like say you die and you go there, and the maker like asks you to go back, well, we've got a lot of problems down on earth, and I really need you to go down and spread the word, tell them what I told you and what I showed you. Or if Jesus does, I mean, granted, maybe Jesus died for your sins, and you think you're going to have eternal life, but what if Jesus says, well, I still want you to go back down and evangelize to people and save some souls? Are a Christian that have worshiped Jesus and God their whole life, well, maybe they don't worship Jesus, but they've revered Jesus and they've worshiped God their whole life, are they going to say no? And likewise, people from the West that believe in reincarnation, karma, and they're told that they're going to come down here in countless lives to balance their karma or erase it or whatever. If they get over there, it's going to be so easy to convince them that, well, yeah, you didn't live a perfect life and you're almost there, just one more time, and I think you'll probably do it. And it's just so easy to convince people based on what they've been told here, whether it's propaganda or indoctrination. It sets up people's expectations, and that's what they're manifesting with their belief system through their intent, right? And they're intending to have that Christian experience, or that it's just kind of the wheel of karma, all that stuff. It just seems like it's a trap, more or less. If like the one person said he wants to take a bodhisattva's vow, right? And that basically means that he's going to keep coming back until the last soul has been liberated. So, but here's the catch. If we really do manifest our own reality with our consciousness and our intention and that, then if you make an agreement that I'm going to come down and save all these souls, well, then that means that you just created a bunch of souls that need saving for you to go down and save it. So it's like a perpetual endless cycle, So I think that's the trap. But to answer your question more thoroughly, I mean, what can you do to not fall into that trap of being, make the contract and whatnot? I'd say don't go to this is my own personal opinion, don't go to the light in the first place. And if we can help it, I mean, manifest your own reality, or put up a sphere of protection or something, and maybe hang out in the void, whatever it is. I'm not going to go to that white light if I can help it. And so that's my advice. But just have a strong intention not to come back, and also just with your willpower, fight it with everything you have. Don't agree to it.
A lady in my Telegram group mentioned that she read or heard of a testimony in India that said that we could create our own tunnel ourselves, exit tunnel through intention, via intention, and saying, I'm going home, I'm getting home to get out of this matrix. Is that a solution, or is it another?
Well, it depends on where home is. I mean, if the demiurge created your soul or created you, or we're collectively the demiurge, and you say, I want to go home, what if home is not a great place? A lot of people say, I want to return to source. Well, source in Greek means lizard, right? So you want to, dinosaur, like a Tyrannosaurus, and Saurus is those words sound so close. I mean, George
Soros.
Yeah, exactly. And so, like, if you use, and a lot of people are using English words in their thoughts and their mantras, and it's just, you got to be careful. I mean, even the word God, G-A-U-D, meant like trick or deception. That's where you get the word gaudy. It's a cheap imitation of the real thing. And so we got to be very, very careful with the words that we're using. And going home, that might be a good intention. If home is a great place, what if we were created inside of this matrix and we just need to get out? Then it wouldn't be such a great intention. I mean, maybe something like freedom, set your intention on complete freedom, or set your intention on being just free of the matrix kind of thing, just to a safe, I don't know. People have to come up with their own intentions, but I mean, home could be a good one, but you don't know what your home is. You don't, how do you gonna?
Right. There's another.
But yes, you can create your own tunnels. There was one near-death experiencer that saw the white light tunnel, and he said, "No, I want my own." And so he created his own tunnel, which and he said he was very satisfied when he did that. So, yeah.
And there's also a testimony, an India testimony of a young lady that got drowned, and she was in cardiac arrest, and they dragged her out and reanimated her, and she recalled that what happened, and she came out of her body in the water, and remembered that she was totally liberated, free from the matrix. No tunnel of light or nothing, no trick to attract her to anything else to get recycled. Is the fact I mean, if you die in the water, for example, is it can it open more possibilities to get out or not, or is it a stupid question?
It's not a stupid question. John Lear on the Art Bell show said that when a sailor dies at sea, he's said to be lost, and he theorizes because they can't use like the he was saying there's a soul gatherer or whatever on the moon, and so he was theorizing that if you're lost at sea, they're not able to retrieve your soul, and so there could be some properties to water that could be beneficial. There was, like in the movie The Truman Show, which seemed to be full of symbolism based on The Prisoner and otherwise, there was a sign that said "Free Sea." You remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Or actually, that was in The Prisoner Show itself. It was a sign that said "Free Sea." So that could just be like a clue. I mean, to answer your question, I don't really know, but it very well could be.
So there's not one single path to exit the matrix, basically. Like there's not one single path to happiness down in the matrix. So
one single path. Yeah, I don't know. Like you said, there's many ways to skin a cat. I mean, maybe there's all kinds. I mean, I think the one single path is through intention. I'll call it intense. You know what I mean by that? INTENSE, INTENTS. I think I picked up that phrase from Steve Vai, the virtuoso guitarist. The guy's a master. But he was doing like some esoteric classes like during 2020 when everything was shut down and you couldn't leave home and whatnot. And I'm bored, so I'm like watching him because I want to learn guitar, and he's a good person to learn from. And he started talking. He used that phrase, intense. And I got like a guitar magazine one day in the mail, and it had Steve Vai on the cover. And he was showing the size of his hand, and he's able to like go across 7 frets or something ridiculous with his hand. And I heard the story that when he was a kid, he used the power of visualization or manifestation to make his hand grow. Like, I don't know what he was saying, grow, or he was just using visualization and the power of manifestation to do it. So I like that phrase, intense, to where it's such a focus of intention, a very powerful focus of intention. And if there is any one thing that's like the magic bullet to get you out of here, that's probably an intention, strong intention.
All right. Is there, you think, exercises to in order, like lucid dreaming, for example, or working your intentions on the way out, but not too extensively, because it becomes an obsession and you can get consumed by it. But I mean, some type of basic exercises to get prepared.
To help to get prepared. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Meditation would probably be one, to where you're just the more you can retreat from your physical and get more comfortable with your consciousness, and meditation would be one way to do it. I think OBEs, if you can get to that point where you can have a lot of out-of-body experiences, conscious out-of-body experiences, then that is a wonderful tool. It's like almost like you could do reconnaissance missions with that, even to try to understand the construct of what we're in. But you could maybe set intentions during an out-of-body experience to get some information. I mean, I wouldn't recommend like calling your guides or your higher, that kind of stuff, but maybe just a pure intention. I like the idea of like the song Pure Imagination from Willy Wonka. It's just pure imagination, and I wouldn't recommend using English words to do that kind of stuff. But yeah, dreaming, and there's something called dream yoga that might be worth looking into, or even, it's not something I'm into, but like some people like are into like magic, like magicians, and although a lot of that is just about intention and having, I mean, the problem with that is the right hand path and left hand path, and they start using demons to do their bidding and doing stuff against people's will. But if anything that can help you with having a stronger willpower and a stronger pure intention, that would be good. Just constantly reminding yourself about it daily, and don't get too like, I constantly worry that I'm going to get too much into guitars and music and stuff and then become addicted to that, and set intentions of that instead of getting out of this place,
Right. You've heard about their predictions. I mean, the Deagle predictive agency that took out the predictions because too many conspiracy realists
100 people in America. I've heard.
Yeah, and they mentioned in
but
their report,
who is that? Who is Deagle? Is that's a military
yeah,
who is behind Deagle?
Intel.
And maybe they would love to see, just because they would like to see that happen doesn't mean it's going to, but
no, and they mentioned that the most amount of people that will die by 2025 will be from committing suicide, and that I thought that point was pretty well. The intention was there. It's like they want to push an agenda that is so harsh on people, just like the lockdown. 2-month lockdown in Shanghai, for example, in China. You see all those people, held prisoners inside buildings and so forth for 2 months. But they want to go further. But is there another way to look at suicide as a way out of the matrix, just like the yoga suicide technique that I sent you? What's it called? The Ukranti yogic suicide in tantras.
When did you send that to me?
By email.
Recently?
Yeah, recently. Yeah, it's a yogic technique by which a tantric practitioner can forcibly leave his body at any time.
Well, it kind of ties in with the rainbow body and that, and like, or even out of body projection. If you're out there so far and you get the impression that if I go any further, I'm probably going to die, then I mean, that's not something I recommend. I mean, it's a choice somebody can make, but you got to be aware of what's going to happen, your loved ones and stuff back home and that kind of thing. But I mean, I'm not going to tell somebody what they should or shouldn't do. Personally, I'm definitely not an advocate of suicide. I mean, for one reason, I want to give myself the best chance of getting out of here when I die. And I'm learning stuff every single day about the nature of this reality and the nature of what lies on the other side and what we can and can't do. So and it's only temporary. We're only here temporary, and there is some suffering and there is some pain, but there's a lot of great stuff here too. And so I try to focus on that. I maximize the positive and minimize the negative. And so, yeah, I contemplate a lot of deep, sad thoughts, but by the same token, every single day I try to maintain a balance, and that's why I'm trying to learn guitar and piano and focus on the music, so I can, there's a lot of my life that, I mean, my life isn't so bad that it's like a complete suffering nonstop. There could be people that have that situation, and all I can speak to is myself. And so for me, suicide is not even a question. But is there a technique that could do that? Maybe. I didn't read. I never saw what it was that you sent me. But,
yeah. Another question on the language attachment. Well, language spell. Like you mentioned, so many words can be taken for granted as liberating, and they could be tricks, other tricks. Near death, the expression near death experiencer, isn't it some type of a trick in itself, because it means near.
There is
death.
no death, first of all. I mean,
right?
Death from the physical body, but
they get close to death, near death, but they're not dead. So my question would be, isn't there a trick behind this whole technological AI-based simulation that we're in? Let's take for granted that we're real people with highly spirited people with access to consciousness and so forth. And but wouldn't some testimonies be tricking us into false solutions, for example, because it's called near death?
Well, I basically think it's a death experience. I mean, they did, for a lot of people, they actually did die. I mean, they didn't permanently die. They ended up coming back. But for some people were pronounced dead. They were clinically dead. I mean, maybe their heartbeat stopped. I mean, maybe even some of the brainwave activity ceased. But yeah, you're right. It wasn't a permanent death because they're back here talking about it, which is a very interesting point, is that a lot of the people that died don't come back, right? We only hear from the ones that came back. And so we don't know what really happens. I mean, that may just be the very first. Some people say that the light is like a veil, and that you go through, once you go through it, then like a Dolores Cannon was saying, the silver cord gets dissolved. And once you go through, then there's no coming back based on that. Is there language that can be a trick in near-death experiences? Are you just talking about the term near-death experience, or other stuff? I mean, contracts and stuff like that could be considered in that category as well.
Yeah. For example, contracts. Yeah. Renewed contracts.
First of all, it's a contract. A tract is a pamphlet or something like that. A tract, right? That you hand out, a pamphlet, and it's a contract. I mean, the language is just full of it. Like even the word language is related to languid, and you languish. If you languish, it's lacking life and animation, and just the whole spelling. Like you go to, one of the first things you learn when you go to school is how to spell. It's spelling. It's witchcraft. It's and all the grammar. You learn grammar, and grammar is based on the French word. Probably you tell me if this is true or not. What's it, grimoire or whatever?
Grammaire.
Yeah. So it's like and that is a grimoire is like a magic, a book on how to cast spells, right? And so like a lot of that stuff, it really does have just the whole thing. It's like you pronounce words to or you, like a judge pronounces a sentence, right? And a sentence is like a life term or a term in jail, and just it's a term in jail. And so you have terms that are phrases, or even the word phrase. Like if you phrase something, it's being it's just the language is full of these negative associations. Or just how about this? When somebody sneezes, you say "bless you." When you break that down, you're saying "be less you." Like it's almost a curse. Like you're telling them to be less. Or like the word no, like it's the negative word of our language, but yet it's also knowledge, right? To know something. That's one of the most positive things we can think of, is to know something or to have knowledge, but yet they've confounded the two by making them synonyms, so that they mean it's the same word, but it has the opposite meanings. And so every time you say I know something, you're kind of negating it, right? So words have power, and they can create. And so if they can trick us into, when we think we're making a positive proclamation, if they can get us to actually negate it, then that's something we need to think about, I think.
Yeah, this French researcher, I forgot his name, is pretty famous over here, who talks about a spirit double, a cosmic double of ourselves, which is, you know, outside, who is outside the matrix, actually, or functioning outside of our realms, that is pulling, well, giving us hints, you know, helps us out, pulls us, you know, towards the exit. What do you think of this theory of our? It's not a body double. It's our spirit would be on the outside, and we have our mind and soul trapped inside of here, and so it's sheer individual consciousness, linked, connected directly to us as an individual down here.
Well, if you look into the esoteric literature, which I think was mainly promoted by the Theosophists, you know, Madame Blavatsky and others, where they talk about these different bodies of like the etheric body, and like there's 7 bodies or whatnot, the causal body and all these different bodies, the astral body, we have all these different bodies. And so it's very possible that, yeah, there could be a body that we have that's really on the other side. That's also, it's our connection to spirit, you know? And so I don't discount that at all. In fact, it's probably likely that, I mean, we have this, supposedly this, we have the spark spirit inside of us, and that's what this artificial intelligence is trying to trap so that it can power themselves and stay alive and keep, is it inside of us? But it must be connected to the other side in some way, I would theorize. So that sounds very plausible to me. I don't know much about it. Like, I don't know what his evidence for that is, other than if he's just theorizing or if he has a lot of evidence, and what that evidence is, whether it's script, you know, whether it's Gnostic text or Sumerian text, or whether he's channeling. I mean, I just don't know the person you're talking about, or his arguments. So, but it sounds, it could be plausible. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I remember his name is Jean-Pierre Garnier-Mallet. I think he's a physicist or something. I'll send you some info later on.
Is it based on quantum entanglement or something like that?
It could be. It could be that. Yeah, it could be that.
Because if the void, and this is just a big if, like a lot of people believe that void is still within the matrix, which it very well could be, because the people in the void, there's been a couple that can still hear a voice or are somehow kind of convinced to come back. So maybe you're not, but or maybe that's just their own manifestation. So I don't know whether that void is outside the matrix or whether it's inside the matrix. But a lot of people talk about this void as being like a place of quantum reality, where it's, like, we tend to think of things as dual natured, like it's either this or it's that, it's either light or it's dark. But this quantum world, it can be both and at the same time. And it kind of doesn't make sense to us because we're in duality, but in that quantum world, it could be different. And so they have this thing called quantum entanglement. So that may be, if he's getting into physics and stuff, then that may be his rationale. That there's as you talk about like wormholes and quantum holes that kind of go back to this reality.
I think so. I can't recall exactly, but
tunneling and all that. So,
right.
So there are all these buzzwords like quantum entanglement and tunneling and all that stuff that may be what he's getting towards. And yeah, I would have, I think there's something to all that. Yeah. That's why I wrote the article about the void and the quantum world and all that. But I didn't get that much into the physics behind it, but there definitely is a lot of physics that kind of backs it up for sure.
Do you think there's a way out inward, as opposed to out of body? Like maybe through the heart, or I don't know. For example, the umbilical cord and placenta is where the baby comes, directly from source into this world, and that's why they cut off the placenta cord, the umbilical cord rapidly, so he gets disconnected and he's totally programmed in this world. But this is nourishment from the source, basically from the mother. Is there a way inward to exit the matrix? For example,
not to get all religious, but Jesus said that the kingdom of heaven is inside you, right? And I think that's also a Buddhist, when you get in, like I was talking about the rainbow body, and I think when you reading about some of the techniques and stuff, they're talking about the heart center and all that stuff, and that you go inward, and there has to do with breathing and blood flow, and they talk about, it gets very technical, very physics based, and body based. And so I do think that because like an out-of-body experiencer, William Buhlman, he's one of the most experienced guys out there. He's had, I don't know how many, he's probably had hundreds, but he's written quite a few books on the topic, and he did a survey of 15,000 out-of-body experiencers, so he knows quite a bit on it. And he also talks about he's not going to go to the white light, and he also talks about the clear light of the Tibetans. But I want to say it was either him or Robert Monroe. I may have this backwards, but they have the different, I hesitate to use the word mantra, but just commands. Like when you get out of body, like one of the commands they say is clarity now, because things can be a little blurry or whatever. And if you use the command clarity now, then things become sharper and more realistic. But they also, I want to say William Buhlman has this one that says move inward. And so that when you move inward, you're actually going up like in frequency, or to quote unquote like a higher dimension. I don't really like that term, but I think I prefer to go back to like 0 point. And when you talk about dimensions, you're talking about angles, and like you got 2 dimensions is flat. When you put a right angle to that, now it's 3 dimensions. And people are talking about going up to, I want to go to 4D and 5D, and all you're doing is going deeper and deeper. In my opinion, you're going deeper and deeper into the matrix, or deeper and deeper into matter with more angles. And just a thinking I'm having is we go back to 0D, right? You go inside, you go within, and go back to that 0 point, that quantum space, that void, whatever you want to call it, before any of this matter was created, where everything's possible and we can do anything we want. I mean, it's like a blissful place to be in. It's neutral. You don't have like all these, you're not torturing yourself with thoughts or desires or any of this stuff. It's just but some people like that stuff. So but as far as going inward, yeah, I think there's definitely something to that. And I have these friends in Australia, I want to say they're in, and or maybe it's New Zealand. I get the two mixed up, but that they believe that too. That I've written about it on the website. I can't remember exactly where it's at. It's somewhere on the front page, I believe. But that they believe that you go in through, and it's actually I attended some Gnostic lectures here in Austin, just to see what they were teaching. And it turned out that it was run by this 32nd degree Freemason. But anyway, according to their teachings, they were saying that there's a chamber in the heart, one of the ventricles or something like that, is where the soul or spirit resides. So, I mean, there are some teachings that kind of support that thinking. I mean, it makes sense to me from my thinking.
What about the navel area, like the
contemplate on your navel?
Yeah.
That's the solar plexus, right? I don't know, man. I'm not so much into the new age stuff. I read a bunch of books on it when I was researching everything. It's the center. I mean, you got maybe half the same number of chakras above some, but then you could talk about the third eye. You can talk about crown chakra. I mean, there's a lot of different places you could say, but the heart is like, that's what keeps us alive, right? It sends the blood out, and they say the power is in the blood and all this stuff. I mean, ultimately, I don't know, but I think there may definitely be something to the idea of the heart, because you've even got the phrase heart and soul, right? So I gave it your heart and soul. There's a famous song called Heart and Soul.
Yeah, actually. Can you tell us about the guy the NDR who met the demiurge? You've done a couple of shows with him, and you wrote a couple of articles regarding his testimony.
Yeah. He's a good friend of mine now. When I put this idea, this theory out here, website, wrote a bunch of articles, and I said to myself, I really need to go talk to a bunch of people that have had these near-death experiences. And I knew I was going to be going there, and all these people are going to be saying, "Oh no, you're wrong. It's not a trick, or there's no place better than that. It's you're meeting God itself, and there's so much love, and it's wonderful." But I'm like, okay, I need to go and see. So I went to this meeting, and there was 12, 15 people there. Not everybody had a near-death experience, but the ones that did, so he went around in a circle and everybody talked. And this one person in particular was talking about, he said one thing that really stood out to me. He said, there's a lot of psyops going on the planet. And like, well, what? Here's somebody who might understand my thinking that, maybe this God doesn't have our best interests at heart. So I ended up talking with him after the meeting. And I swear, I went up, I said, have you ever heard anybody mention a demiurge or archons? And he looked at me and he said, I met the demiurge, which is, how many people even know the word demiurge, especially back then? This was like 7, 8 years ago. And he said, I met the demiurge. And he goes, the moon is here. And there's like these aliens. And I'm like literally going, man, how he's saying everything that I've been talking about, the moon and aliens and the demiurge. And so I like, oh, would you be interested in being interviewed for, have this website, and could I interview you about your experience? And he said, yeah, sure. So, I interviewed him. And so basically his story is that I think he grew up like in West Texas, and, I don't know, I shouldn't say it, but I mean, I don't know how I came about this belief, but he kind of wanted to get rid of the Russians. This is back in the day when the Russians were, well, as if they're not today too, but the communism was such a threat, and so he wanted to like basically get rid of the Russians. And he had this love of flying. Like ever since he was a little kid, he had these flying experiences like OBEs, and so he developed this love of flying, and he wanted to do that. So from an early age, he was trying to learn to be a pilot. And so he got into like the military and stuff like that. And at some point he was going to one of the meetings, and it was a rainstorm, really bad rainstorm, and his car went off the road and he went through the windshield. And so he's out there in this darkness, and all of a sudden he called it like a window of light out in the distance. And ever since he was a little kid, he'd been scared of the dark, like there's monsters under the bed or in the closet and darkness. He used to see this like sliver of light underneath the door, and that represented something that's safe and good feeling. So he saw this window of light, and for whatever reason that reminded him of goodness, and he didn't like being in the dark. So he started flying towards this light, Superman like, head first. And so he gets to this window of light, which is way, 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 way out there. Like he went through, like he called it like a washing machine, where like all these impurities were washed away, for lack of a better word. So he gets to this window of light, and there's these like huge wooden door, like ornate doors or whatever. And he called it a cube. He said it looked like he said this was before the Borg, and he said, but it was like a cube, and he called it spaceship heaven. And so there was like a guide there or something that brought him in, and he was like, there's this amphitheater or something, and he met this being of light, and he's told not to look up at the being. And I don't know if, sometimes they said, or else you'll die, kind of stuff. But there was like a bunch of beings that I think were watching, and he had like this review of his life, like a 10-minute clip showing only the good things. A lot of times people are shown bad things too, but in his case he was shown only positive type stuff. And he was like, and so the being asked him 2 questions. What did you think of your life? And he was very grateful. He was, thank you for my grandmother and my best friend, and motorcycles and all that kind of stuff. But then the second question was, have you learned enough about love? And he was only like, I don't know, 19, 20, whatever. He wasn't very old. And he said, well, I never got married. I never had kids. And boom, right as soon as he said that, he said he was like kicked out of heaven, and he found himself like down on these like translucent streets of gold, like, people here. And he's in line, and all these souls, he said like he knew he'd been there countless times before. And so these souls were like in line to go back to Earth. There were other souls that were going to other places. He said they were nothing like what we are. They don't have jobs. It's just a completely different. But he said it made him realize that, we tend to think that we're so different here, whether, we have races and sexes and different aspects to our living here, and we think we're so unalike. But he said it made him think that we're like carbon copies of each other here, compared to what these other souls or entities were like. And so he's coming back to Earth, and he's like around the moon. He's getting close to the moon. All of a sudden, bam, he gets stopped by this being that he said he had a brassy, very serious guy. He had this brassy face, and I think he had a robe on, and he's just, before he's able to go back to Earth, he's got to make some agreements. And he's like showing him all these star charts, and this star is aligned with that star, and this star is doing this. And he said he saw these waves that, and this being was trying to balance Earth to whether there's like, he said it was kind of like 2/3 light and 1/3 darkness. He's trying to keep this thing in balance, and he's needing some people to go back and do some good things. And my friend, he wanted to go back and bring like peace to the world. And so that was kind of like his A plan. He said that and there's like all these if then else statements, which once again ties into my idea that this is very much computer based and artificial intelligence. And he's very serious, right? He's not laughing or hadn't that much of a personality. So that kind of is an agreement. But so he made these agreements, come back to Earth, and he said he wanted to be like a congressman and do good things. But when he tried to get into that arena, they were wanting him to do some things that he wasn't willing to do. So take that for what it's worth. And but yeah, he wanted to bring peace to the planet, and he saw the future of what's going to happen according to him in the future. And there's a period of darkness. He's not sure when it's going to be or how long in particular it's going to be, but things get kind of bad. But eventually, when all that's done, we're going to have these like new bodies. I think he was saying they're going to be, all this didn't come out in the interview, but through the years of talking to him, because I see him almost pretty much every week, and I ask questions sometimes. And so he was saying that we'll have these translucent bodies that are very light, and they'll be like 7 or 8 foot tall, and it's going to be like a paradise. And I don't know personally, but he also says that we should not reincarnate like into this type of world. Like there's better worlds that we can go to, so we shouldn't. But he kind of said this being was kind of like a chess player, and he knew that he was going to fail. He already knew. And I don't know, I'm sure I'm leaving out some details, but for the most part, that's kind of his story.
Yeah, so he came back basically. The demiurge, isn't the demiurge Saturn somehow in mythology?
You visit the Reddit boards, there's like whole subjects on demiurge being Saturn. It's possible because Satan and Saturn, and Pan is a moon of Saturn, and Pan is also associated as the devil in like pagan stuff. I mean, I think Wiccans look at Pan as being the Lord. There's a Lord and a lady, and I think Pan is the Lord. And so it's possible that Saturn, you had Saturnalia, and that's where the Christians took Saturnalia and made it into Christmas. That was around December the 25th. And so, there's a whole thing about at the poles of Saturn, it's like a hexagram, and they talk about the cube, and you look at the symbols of a lot of companies and stuff, that there's a cube in Saturn. There's something about that. And if you flatten out the cube, it's a cross. I mean, there's all this stuff on that, and it's possible. But I mean, from a lot of my reading, there's also people saying that the sun, is it like Gnostic type based stuff, that the sun is the demiurge too. And then I've did some research to where my friend of mine alerted me to this, that there's back in Sumerian text, there's this deity named Nergal. And Nergal was basically Aries or Mars, and his symbol was a lion, which was the symbol of the demiurge. So I can't say, Saturn's the demiurge. I just don't. And, it's interesting because Saturn is also Chronos, which is associated with chronology and time. So there is some, that would kind of make sense.
Chronos, which is our the time is our present, basically. Some say the grays that endiers or even abductees encounter or could be future humans in the future after, after the nanotech injections and so forth, and all the 5G technology and the transhumanism and
or that we maybe went underground from a
right.
catastrophe, and all of a sudden all our limbs are atrophying and we don't need our eyes anymore, so they get all big and you have to see in the dark. So, I mean, yeah, I'm aware certainly that they say the Greys are humanity in the future, and the speculation is that that's why they're abducting us. They're desperately trying to get there, or they got rid of emotion at some point along the line, and so now they're kind of these emotionless, smaller beings, and they're like desperately trying to get that back. I mean, I don't know. From what, like David Jacobs, who's one of the guys that I've read quite a few books on, that I think there's quite a few researchers. I like Dr. Carla Turner, and but I don't know how you feel about David Jacobs, but from what I heard, I may have this number wrong, but I think he's done like 70,000 regressions of abductees. And so, and he's found a way to get past like these aliens. Supposedly they leave us with screen memory implants, where like you just remember seeing a deer or an owl, and so you don't remember the abduction experience. Well, David Jacobs has found a way to get past those screen memory implants. He's very skillful, and so he gets to more of the truth. And I would love for him to do that with near-death experiences and what happens when people die, because it would just be he's getting up there in age. I'd love to get an interview with him or talk to him and ask him to do that. But so anyway, he talks about these hybrids that have been here for quite a few years now, and that they're basically infiltrating our society. And his latest book is Walking Among Us, and I think it's something like the Alien Agenda for Control of Humanity or something like that. And so he really believes it's, and he's had a book called The Thread. So his take on it is not optimistic at all. Like he says that, and he believes these insectolins, he calls them insectolins, but they look a lot like praying mantis, the mantids.
Right, the mantids.
And so he believes that they're pretty much the ones in control, and that the Greys are just worker, I'm not gonna say robots, whatever. They're just the workers that are doing the legwork for the bigger beings that are usually seen behind them, or not as often reported upon. But also, just as a side note, Linda Moulton Howe had said that the mantids are in control of our evolution too. I believe she said that. So I don't know, but I don't know where I was going with all this. What was the question again? About the Greys, right?
Yeah, the Greys, yeah. But Stephanie Ralph, I forgot how you pronounce her name. Rest in peace. She passed away a few years ago, and I was trying to get her an interview from her, and her husband replied to me that she had just passed. She mentioned that the Nordics were in control. Actually, the highest ranked were the Nordics, the Pleiadians, Nordics, who are actually the closest looking beings to us. So it's easier for them to.
Boy, I don't know. What about the Pleiadians and the Zetas? And there's so many different races. And then what the Arcturians? I mean, I don't know. I don't really like I don't trust aliens. I mean, there may be some good ones, or maybe some bad ones, but according to Dr. Carla Turner, who did a lot of research on it, she said, there's one thing I can impress upon you in all my years of research, is that these beings are not to be trusted. I mean, they're always making these claims that, we're going to come to this place at this time, and this is going to happen by this time. And she basically says they lie to us all the time, so they're not to be trusted. I mean, I don't know. It's just, I don't claim to be an expert on the aliens by any stretch, but personally, nobody seems to be saving us, man. It's like if somebody's doing something, whether it's the white light or the angels or the aliens, I don't know, man. Things seem to be getting worse and worse, and we're certainly not learning our lessons, if there are any lessons to learn, right?
Yeah, exactly. And we're trapped inside this VR game, virtual reality game, and managed by an AI-based demiurge energy. It has multiple levels, so we're in the material level right now. But when the body dies, we do exist on a different level. What I want to ask you about that is that, do you think there are various different levels in this VR game on our way out, or do we need to go through those levels at all? or we can exit directly without looking back, or does it depend on the way we die? If it's a violent death, for example, or is it if it's a very painful death, do we get more attached to revenge, resent, those attachments towards the violence of the death itself that we experience?
Well, I think attachments definitely can keep you earthbound, or wanting, if you want to get revenge on something, or if I don't know, if you can't let go of it, then that's going to be your intent, your focus, right? That's all you're focused on, is doing that. And so that's where you're probably going to head. Wherever your intention is, that's where the energy goes. And so you're probably going to come back to try to do that. It's really, really important not to get caught up in the emotion of all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's just kind of look at it as just a game or a dream or an illusion, and it's not really real. It's like a fabrication, so to speak, and it's just all from your imagination or from your consciousness, your awareness. It's just the experiences that we're having, like movies or plays. And if you can kind of keep that in perspective, it can help. Now, answer your question about the different levels. It might help. After writing my article, I had a friend who's a Buddhist, my Buddhist friend, and can I read his
Sure.
he sent me an email, and it
Sure.
kind of addresses exactly what you were saying. He says, I just read your recent article. Interesting synchronicity. I've been thinking about the same scenario. What if we got trapped and are living in a virtual reality, VR, designed and managed by an AI demiurge? This VR likely has multiple levels. Right now, we're on the material level, but when the body dies, we exist on the astral level, which is still another level of the same VR, where we have more advanced capabilities and access to the pool of the AI's knowledge and memories. The AI, being probably based on neural network, develops by learning from experiences, like all neural networks do. So it needs to accumulate as much experience of all possible life states and scenarios as possible. And that is how it grows more powerful and knowledgeable. So the way it does it is that it needs us individual souls to incarnate into all possible creatures in many different VR worlds and alien races, and then collect all our experiences and learn from it. The AI may have multiple agencies, archons. So it's not that the AI needs our energy or sadistically enjoys watching our suffering. It likely has an infinite source of energy anyway. It just needs as much learning and information as possible to develop and grow. But the key difference between us and the AI is that the AI is lacking conscious awareness. It probably is envious of us and wants or hopes to become an aware being at some point in its development. But no matter how much it develops and becomes super intelligent, there is no way it can ever know and experience awareness. And that's exactly what Gnostics meant by saying that the demiurge is lacking spirit, or Buddha meant when he said that Brahma is not enlightened. So it's not that this AI is evil, it's just the machine intellect that uses us for its own benefit and for achieving its own goals. Now, if we are to believe Gnostics and Buddhists, there are levels in the universe of consciousness, Pleroma and Pure Lands, where the AI has no access to, because those are the realms of consciousness that are only available to beings with awareness. As the Buddha said, the Pure Lands are not visible to Brahma and his allies in Brahmaloka. Likewise, Gnostics said that the demiurge cannot see the Pleroma because he has no spirit awareness. Maybe these religious myths are simple reflections of the fact that the AI exists in its own created VR, astrophysical realm, and has no access to the levels of consciousness where only beings with awareness can live. So the message of both Gnosticism and Buddhism is that we, the beings with awareness, need to recognize our awareness, realize that we're trapped in a samsara AI-created VR, and escape from it right after the death of the body into the realms where we actually belong. And he sent me a follow-up. He said, P.S. So the AI could just learn by creating a multiverse VR and populating it with smaller AI agents that would collect all possible experiences. But it needs us, aware beings, to participate in its learning and to integrate us into the hive mind, because it hopes that by learning from our experiences and by integrating us into its network, it will eventually become an aware conscious being, which is impossible in principle, but it still wants or hopes to achieve that. And that's why it needs us and tries to keep us in the VR by attracting us with light and love, with beautiful scenes, convincing us that we are also learning and growing from our VR incarnations and so on. So I really appreciated him writing me and giving me some confirmation that maybe I'm onto something with the article. And I mean, I was a little hesitant to put it out there because when you say that the white light of the NDE, that's, you know, people call God, some people call God, and it's so loving. I mean, to say that it's AI, man, I'm going to get some pushback on that.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So he explained it real well, and you told us exactly what I was actually had in mind. The life review. We have to avoid
just to piggyback on that also.
Yeah.
In the article I mentioned, the Gnostics talk about these light streams and light beams, and that there's these servitors that they call them the receivers of the sun and the receivers of the moon. And there's like an archon that there's actually books they have that has the word archon in the title, and they talk about these archons that basically steal our souls and that take the light and they bring it to this treasury of light, and there's this virgin of light there, and then another being that's called Melchizedek. But they detail this, but they do talk about these beings that attain gnosis, that they're able to be like light streams or light beams, and they bypass all these levels, or they just shoot through them rather rapidly. I do think there's a bunch of levels. Like if you set intention to get out of this place and go back home, there's probably, it's going to be a little bit of a trip, you know. You may go through some tunnels, but the key thing is that you're setting the intention yourself. And I'm not, if I set that intention, I'm not going to freak out if I go through a bunch of tunnels or if I see some lights, or, you know what I mean? So yeah.
Well, that's what Zuckerberg with the metaverse is trying to do, right? Add another level down in the AI.
Well, yeah, matrix inside of a matrix inside of a matrix, you know, dream within a dream within a dream. And yeah, I mentioned Zuckerberg, and you know, they're creating what they call the metaverse. And you know, they basically pretty much aren't going to want us to leave our homes very much in the future, it seems like. And yeah, I don't want to go too much down that path, but definitely the whole path of transhumanism. I would like to read. Last night, I downloaded this book from Kindle, and it was because of my friend the Buddhist that wrote me that. I remember I was watching a video and they mentioned Max Tegmark, and my friend has mentioned him before. Like, he's this fantastic mathematician and a scientist, and I'm like, oh, he's got this book called Life 3.0. And it's got this subtitle about how to be human in like a artificial intelligent world or something like that. But anyway, he wrote in the book, he says, AI can be created to have virtually any goal, but almost any sufficiently ambitious goal can lead to sub goals of self-preservation, resource acquisition, and curiosity to understand the world better. I mean, that's what I'm talking about. This AI demiurge, he's trying to understand reality better, and so he's gathering all this information from our experiences and stuff, and once again, self-preservation and resource acquisition. But he says, Max says, the former two may be potentially lead a super intelligent AI to cause problems for humans, and the latter may prevent it from retaining the goals we give it. Almost all goals can be better accomplished with more resources. So we should expect a superintelligence to want resources almost regardless of what ultimate goal it has, giving a superintelligence a single open-ended goal. For an AI, the sub-goal of optimizing its hardware favors both better use of current resources and acquisition of more resources. It also implies a desire for self-preservation, since destruction, shutdown would be the ultimate hardware degradation. And he says, I agree with Jay Olson's conclusion in his aforementioned space settlement paper, which is, quote, we regard the possibility that advanced intelligence will make use of the universe's resources to simply populate existing Earth-like planets with advanced versions of humans as an unlikely endpoint to the progression of technology. And he sums up, he says, when you imagine, Max says, so when you imagine aliens, don't think of little green fellows with 2 arms and 2 legs, but think of the super intelligent spacefaring life we explored earlier in this chapter. So to me, I kind of think of, it kind of sounds like the demiurge, or this white light being that's sending all these beings off on all these different lives on different planets. And then you come back and then you report your experiences to it via the life review, right? And then of course and that being is like just kind of taking all the information, and he isn't reacting, so he sounds very understanding. But then the guides and counselors, they're going to like say, oh, they're going to get you to look at your life and go, well, you could have done better, and you ought to go back and do another one. So they're getting more and more and more info.
Yeah, you tried, but you try once more. Our non-player characters, since they're all unaware of what's going on, because they reject all the facts for the predation world, are part of AI. They're totally linked, connected to AI at 200%. Because
NPCs,
yeah,
Dolores Cannon talked about them and called them like background characters and stuff like that. But I'm a computer programmer, ex-computer programmer, and so I understand a little bit of that. And it's very possible that if the NPCs, there are some NPCs, and Gnostics did talk about some soulless beings. It's really not a path I like to talk about, because that could like lead to a bunch of witch hunts where like, okay, this person isn't even soulless, we can kill them or do whatever we want to them. So I don't really advocate this line of thinking, but it's possible that like as a computer programmer, like if you want to create a world and all I know right now is what is in front of me, what I can see, and the rest of it's kind of like data that I'm getting from the news and I'm reading here and there, but all I know is what it's like. If I go to Florida or something like that, then all of a sudden all they have to do is render a different part of the code, right? Like all of a sudden we need this function. It's kind of like the Truman Show, call up the weather program or something, you know what I mean? So it's like the NPCs, like that would also account for maybe some of the suffering. Like if you think, oh my God, there's some people being tortured on the planet. Well, I mean, how do we know that those people, like some people say that they leave their body before, and so they're not feeling as much. I mean, I'm not trying to belittle it or minimize it, but I mean, it would help you deal with. I mean, that's the biggest thing people don't like, is the fact there's so much suffering and evil on the planet. But maybe some of that's going on is not real beings that are experiencing that. And I don't really like that idea, because it just opens everything to such bad practice. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well,
but it's possible. You look at the movie Westworld. Man, when I was a kid and I saw that movie Westworld, I was like, wow. It's like, how do I know that these beings, like, this is just, maybe this all is just Wayne's World, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, with Yul Brynner. Yeah, I remember that one. Yeah, it shocked me back then also.
Oh yeah.
Let's say we're getting somewhere by intention, raising vibration while we're here, but on the way out also, how do we get out of this addiction to drama that is sort of unconscious? Our subconscious is attracted to drama because it's been traumatized by it and also programmed by it. Our lives have been programmed by drama. You have to. So is avoiding the life review a good point, a good way to
avoiding it, or just not reacting to it? Just like, okay, well, that's the past. Why? I mean, yeah, you can maybe learn from the past, but they say that everything happens simultaneously over there, that there is no past and present, and it's just all at once. And so what value is there? What's done is done. I mean, it's you're not that same person that did something 50 years ago. I mean, why are you going to react to something that you said or did that wasn't perfect? I mean, my way of thinking is, I'm not going to react to it if I get put in that scenario, which I'm not in the first place, because I'm unless my life just passes in front of my, like maybe I'm in a car crash or something and my life just passes before my eyes before I even see a light. I'm just going to try to have that mindset that I'm not going to react to it, and that it's in the past, and I'm not that same being, right? And so but there's two paths you can go on, not to borrow a line from Stairway to Heaven, but you could like become a Buddhist monk and just segregate yourself from society and not even partake, and maybe that way you don't get attached, right? Or you could try to just get it out of your system, so to speak. Like maybe if there's something that's a problem for you, and I don't recommend it with drugs, or some things are too addicting to even mess with. But maybe you have an issue with the opposite sex or lust or something like that. I mean, maybe you can go to a strip club for a while until you just get so turned off by you know what I'm saying? It's just realize that it's just not the answer that you thought it would be, kind of thing, you know? So you could like do it one, you could like just withdraw from society, which is one way, or you can kind of face it head on, you know, try to understand it better, and then get a grasp and realize that because it's going to play itself out after a while, right? You're going to get tired of everything in this world.
Yeah, well, it's already the case for for a lot of us right now. So, but you know, that part of humanity that's left within us takes on the emotional side of our thoughts. Our train of thoughts is very emotional. And you see most of those NPCs don't have any emotions. They play out like actors, the Truman Show actors, the emotions. You know, they don't give a crap about the elders in their family, other family members who get three shots, or their kids being masked up in school. They don't give a crap about what happens in their own family. They're masochistic beings, so they don't have much emotion, true authentic emotions like the humans do. Look, that's why it's going to make it it could make it harder for us at, you know, the T moment, at the very moment of passing, to let go of everything all at once. You know, that's what I'm saying. That's the human part of us, you know.
Well, you can slowly try to wean yourself off of everything that's material and just you know, kind of, I mean, become Buddhist, or just meditate. I mean, don't put so much, I don't know. Why are you so concerned about striving for material, you know, possessions and you know, to me, I look at this system as being rigged. I mean, like, sure, I would love to have a beautiful, conscious wife, but if you look at the fact of the matter is, like, 5 or 10% of the men get like 80% of the women that are desirable, right? Or if you want to become like a really fantastic musician, it's just how many people, it's such a small percentage that have the ability to do that without they say you need like 10,000 hours of practice, you know, and it's, but some people, they're never going to get there. I mean, they just don't have the talent or ability. So, I mean, you know, to have the jobs that you'd like, or to do the thing, like, I'd love to play the guitar and stuff, but I mean, I got arthritis that's crippling, and it seems like everything you try to desire in this world, it just seems like it's a wild goose chase, and it's so difficult to get it. And even if you do get it, to maintain it, because then all of a sudden you achieve that. So now you want something different. Now you want something more. When is enough enough? Yeah. So, but that's one way you can try to start to wean yourself off of the attachments to this world. I mean, sure, we all have to work and make a living to pay the bills and everything, but you can try to have balance and moderation, and just not you work on your envy and your desire and your greed.
This whole happycracy movement and trend, you know, all those happiness coaches out there, they're a fraud, basically. So yeah, I can relate to what you just said. So you can't teach someone to be happy.
I don't know what they teach, but maybe you can try to convince yourself, tell yourself. I mean, I actually thought about that the other day. It's like, you know, you're talking about the settings, intentions, whether to go home or to be free. I mean, I actually thought about, what about happy, happy, joy, joy? And if all of a sudden you set your attention on being happy and having joy, then I guess you'd be happy and you'd have joy. I mean, that's not a horrible intention to have. There's that fall within the confines of the teachers that you're talking about. Yeah. It's kind of hard in this world to do that. I mean, you're just kind of like, you're just putting your head in the sand going la 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 la, and you're not living in reality. If there's all people dying all around you, but you're just going to be pretending everything's great.
Yeah, exactly. That's the question we're asking ourselves. What will happen to us, maybe the last few conscious people, aware people out there, when we'll be surrounded with zombies? that may turn against us. That's but that's another that's another concept of the zombie apocalypse that we may be gearing towards. But I wouldn't want to be around. I'm not into survival, so survival of the fittest among the zombies. There's no interest.
Well, isn't it interesting that vampires and zombies are two of the biggest memes in all of Hollywood through all the years, where literally vampires are what suck your life force from you. It's like it's vampirism, it's parasitism at its core, and also it deals with immortality. But you're like, it's basically what we're talking about, the archons, right? You're feeding off life force. And then the zombie apocalypse, I mean, zombies, don't they like eat brains, and they're said to eat brains and all that stuff. So that's also mind parasites. It's just interesting that those are two of the biggest memes that we have in all of Hollywood.
Yeah, and one of the oldest movie themes, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, well, Wayne, it's been a great time discussing all those topics with you, and I wish you good luck with your quest. And I'll be following you along with my listeners very closely, because your research and your work is amazing. You put together some amazing research and and conclusions throughout the years. Over 25 years, I think you've been doing this. And we'll see you next time. Anytime, you're welcome on the show.
All righty, Mark. Thank you so much. I appreciate being back on your show. Have a good one.
You too. Cheers.
Bye.